Hi there. Today I'd like to talk about, using longer lenses because it's something I haven't done a lot of. Over the years I've owned a couple of longer zooms, very pedestrian, consumer grade zooms, not the heavy duty professional stuff. Closest thing to that I have is a 70-200 f2.8 Tamron. It's an older model, but it's quite good. And I briefly owned an 80-200 f2.8 Nikon, one of the first of their autofocus fast zooms. But over the years, I've had quite a few lenses that extended out to 300 millimeters. There was an old Pentax F lens, which was very heavy, which did not extend when zoomed. It had quite a few advantages, but I really wasn't always happy with the results, so I sold it. I then had a very cheap Pentax zoom with a plastic mount. It was an 80-300, but it was super sharp, and unfortunately I let that go as well. A mistake on my part. After that, I got my hands on a Tamron 80-300, and it was okay, but not great, so I sold it. Then I bought this. Now, this is a Pentax FA 80-320 millimeter f4.5 5.6 lens. It is not their most pedestrian model. It is not in any way professional. It's kind of like the high end of the consumer grade for Pentax at the time. This was the same time that they had the plastic one that I mentioned earlier. This is a nice solid build. It does, however, extend when zoomed, which is not ideal, but hey, we can't have everything. When I purchased it a little while ago, at first I was a little disappointed. It seemed I couldn't get the results from it that I had hoped to, and that I was still better off using my Tamron 70-200. But lately I've been trying it, first of all, on my oldest camera, my oldest DSLR, my Pentax DS, and I was quite taken by the results. It wasn't bad at all. Then I got back my K10, which was a 10 megapixel camera, and started playing with that, and I really liked the results. I've even tried it again on my K3, but I think, as is often the case with higher resolution digital cameras, once you get over, say, 20 megapixels, anything over 20 megapixels starts to show any weaknesses in older lenses. Up to that point, any decent older lens is going to look good. Now, you may get some chromatic aberration, you may get some fringing. That is to be expected. Flare characteristics may not be the greatest. But overall, you will get a very nice lens that, if used properly, will give you very nice pictures. But quite often, softness really starts to creep in once we get into the 24 megapixel cameras that we are so used to seeing right now. I mean, let's face it, pretty much every major APS-C camera now is about 24 megapixels. Even Micro Four Thirds cameras are reaching for that 20 megapixel spot now, with all of the top models already there, and some of the lesser models possibly moving from the 16 megapixel slot they've been in to that point in the not too distant future. Now, I'm never one to say much about megapixels. I think megapixels can be a totally overblown measurement of what a good photograph is. But one definite point is that when you get the super high megapixel cameras, when you get into the 36, 42, 50 megapixel models, then the weaknesses of older lenses really start to show up. And the lens you use all of a sudden becomes far more critical. Now, the irony of that, of course, is that viewed at the same size and printed to the same size, you're not going to notice that. But because of the fact that we do tend to pixel peep and we do tend to look at our images at 100%, at 100% these 36 and up megapixel cameras are going to show some pretty severe limitations from some lenses. Well, anyhow, enough talk about lenses. What I'm going to do is show you a few of the images that I got with this particular lens. I just took a little walk down by the side of the Petitcodiac River. Actually, you can't get near the side of the Petitcodiac from where I live. Instead, there is a rather substantial marsh between where the walking trail is and the river itself. That means, of course, that that marsh is populated by quite a bit of wildlife. Everything from the usual run of ducks and geese to red-winged blackbirds to a number of different bird species, and probably the biggest mammal that's prowling around there is the muskrat. So I hope you enjoy the images. They give a pretty clear indication of what this lens is capable of. Yes, it is a little soft. It's not tack sharp. It is not something that I would use to shoot a safari in Africa. I would hope to be able to get my hands on something a little better. But for the typical use that I put my pictures to now, for images that are going to be on social media, that are going to be shared with friends through messenger services and things like that, this is more than adequate. And really, sometimes, even if it's only as a stopgap, sometimes adequate will do. Sometimes it will fit the bill. And I have seen some very, very nice images from some of my photography friends who are using not this lens, but similarly spec'd lenses. Lenses in that, I'll call it the high-end consumer range. They're not very expensive. They're not necessarily terribly well built. They may have all sorts of minor flaws, but used properly will get great images. Anyhow, enjoy the images and bye for now.